Now we're going to add our buttons onto the main quiz screen, and we're going to do 6 of them. So we're going to have 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do 9. I think that's what we're initially going for. So you can really see how the layout's going to work if you want to expand to that many. I'm only going to use the top 3 and then 1 in the second row right in the middle. So I'm going to close the document outline and begin adding buttons. All right, so I'm just going to start dragging these in place and just position them. And what I'm going to do is drag each of these buttons directly from the object library, because if you try to copy, so if you try to click this one and control copy and just keep creating them, it can create a dependency on your objects. And when you change attributes on one, it really starts to then change attributes on other buttons, and you run into a situation where they start to appear very linked, and it can be hard to get that to undo. So I'm just going to, right now, just kind of place them and let these guides kind of direct me as to where the best place is for alignment. Okay, so now we've got these placed. These middle ones, one thing you can do here, or should be able to do, I'm in the, over here on the side, the size inspector, and in arrange position views, I went to center horizontally in container, and I believe that will keep them centered. And then for these edges, there's not really much that can be done there. Right now, if we look at this in the simulator, it's going to be very messed up. So I am going to go ahead and start doing some pins on this. If I go to the bottom and go to the pin icon, I can do a 0 over here, and then let's see, actually I think I can go ahead with all of these and do a 0 for the left edge, because I know I don't want any margin like this, and add that constraint. Can do the same here, add that constraint. Now it's complaining, so I'm going to go ahead and open the document outline, and we'll see it's probably going to try and do some positioning. So let's see, I'm going to minimize that a little bit, or so I can see everything. It needs the Y position, so I'm going to do one of these and see what happens. I don't want it to move these buttons. Sometimes when you're adding these other constraints, it'll start moving your objects, but right now everything is pretty stable. Okay, so we can bring this back into 100% and work with the top ones. Or actually, we're going to work with these bottom ones, I believe, and see if we can get those to, let's see. I'm not sure how far to the bottom. What I'm going to do now is just take a look at it in the simulator, which is, with these many buttons, you kind of have to do some adjusting, take a look at it and see what's happening, then go back and do some more adjusting. So it's a little bit of trial and error when you get into it, but we have a general idea of the constraints that are needed at this point. And let's see the simulator, bring that up. There it is. All right, so if I go into here, that is looking good right there on the iPhone 5. What we need to do is test it on other devices. So if we go into an iPhone 6, or actually a 6 Plus, see what that looks like. That's going to be the real test and let you know if things are aligning up the way you want them to. Now there may be some small differences, a little bit more space on one phone to the other. Generally though, you just want there to be a consistency and alignment of things. So this is looking good so far. And I'm going to just one more, because I know that this is kind of a complex layout, so I'm going to try the 4S, which is going to be a smaller one. And if that looks fine, then we'll be good, and we can wire up our 4 buttons. All right, and it does. Well, we have a little bit of issue right here with this give up, and we don't have our gray in there. Well, actually, I don't think the gray was, let's check on the iPhone 5. I don't know if the gray was there on the iPhone 5, but give up was not clipped either. So let's see what this looks like on the iPhone 5. I think that's running, yes. Just going to bring the simulator up. There it is. All right, so that looks fine. Now, if we look at the constraints on this, we might be able to see why this is happening. And look at what we have here. I'm going to add a constraint for height on that. I think we may want to keep height. Let's see if these look okay, and they do. Go to the iPhone 5, then I'll switch back to the iPhone 4. So here's the 5. Height looks fine. So this height right here is defined. It should pretty much be the same on all devices. Now if we go to the 4, we can really test that. Nope, still getting completely clipped out. So I'm going to work with this and see if I can get a solution on it rather than just kind of going through it and figuring out what is the best route. And then I'll present the solution once I get it up and running. Okay, so for this, I've come up with kind of a compromise that will make it look okay in the iPhone 4S. What I did was clicked on this button right here, control dragged, and then up in here where this is a question is, so the next element above it, and I did a vertical spacing so that it can retain spacing between this element, this is a question, and this button right here. Really what you want to do when you're creating this kind of layout is have a dependency on the object above. So this object here has a spacing dependency on this one, and then this one has a spacing dependency on this one, and then this one up here has a spacing dependency on the top one. So if you control drag to the top, you can see I've got the trailing space, I've got the vertical spacing to the top guideline. Rather than, for example, doing a control drag all the way to the top, you want to kind of just do it to the next element above it, and that will help retain good spacing. So in the iPhone 4, here's what it's going to look like. It's a little bit different, but the button is still clearly visible. So that's what it looks like in the iPhone 4. In the iPhone 5, it still looks exactly the same. In the 6, it has the gray panel. It's a little bit bigger than what it is in the iPhone 5, but the layout is still fairly consistent across the devices. So here it is, and all of our buttons are visible. So what we're going to do next is go ahead and start doing the IB outlets on these buttons so that we can then begin wiring them up.